Read a letter dated October 5th, addressed to the Executive Council. Dear Councilors, pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 27, Section 4, I am pleased to nominate for reappointment Tonomey Coleman as a member of the Parole Board to a term expiring on August 2nd, 2027. Sincerely, Charles Baker, Governor. Before we hear from you, I see you have some distinguished folks. I see, is that,
Yes, if I
whoa,
could.
whoa, 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 whoa. Is that the Honorable, the distinguished Parole Board Member Bonner? Good to see you. You're doing an outstanding job. Many of my constituents tell me that, and I feel it's important that you realize that. At this point, sir, you can introduce who your first witness would be.
Yes, I actually have two speakers. One is not here yet. She's coming all the way from Western Mass. Her name is Sue Collette. She's an IPO over at Shirley Medium, MCI Shirley Medium. My other speaker is Attorney John Well, right here. I've known John Well since 2013.
Thank you, and we'll hear from John. Thank you. You can stand or sit, whatever you like.
Sure.
Choice.
Well, good morning. Dear Honorable Governor Councilors, I support in the strongest terms the renomination and confirmation Parole Board Member Tonomey Coleman to another term on the Massachusetts Parole Board. He has truly earned this distinction. As a member of the Defense Bar, my practice is focused on corrections and parole board representation. I'm a retired 33-year career employee with the Massachusetts Department of Correction, a practicing attorney for 32 years, and have now worked with inmates and parolees for 46 years. I've presented over 100 lifer parole cases, non-lifer cases, and parole revocation cases for Coleman for more than 9 years. I've had the opportunity to assess his skill sets, his temperament, his examination style, and his decision-making. I have the utmost respect for Board Member Coleman. Without exception, he has presented himself as a consummate professional in the execution of his responsibilities. The citizenry of Massachusetts have been well served by his meticulous preparation for parole hearings and his unique ability to examine and assess risk and suitability for parole, skills he honed during his previous career as a defense attorney and by his nearly decade of risk assessment as a member of the Parole Board. Moreover, Mr. Coleman consistently demonstrates a professional deportment during all parole hearings, treating inmates, victims, families, attorneys, and district attorneys with respect. He balances public safety needs, integration needs of offenders who have earned the privilege of parole. Parole board members need to be careful that they are making decisions based on accurate information, not judging people erroneously due to their limited ability to effectively communicate with the board or due to mental health considerations. Board Member Coleman makes fair, well-informed, and reasoned decisions. During his nine-year tenure on the parole board, Mr. Coleman has acquired considerable knowledge about substance abuse, cognitive issues, addictions, mental health, and human development. His experience on the parole board in making public safety decisions is extensive, with thousands of parole hearings under his belt. His experience as a seasoned member of the parole board is not easily replaceable. Even in instances when I have not agreed with Mr. Coleman on a particular parole decision, I and the inmates I represent have been treated with respect, fairness, and compassion. Board Member Coleman has demonstrated that he's a dedicated public servant. The Commonwealth will be well served by his renomination and confirmation. I believe his unique professional background and his extensive hands-on experience on the parole board makes his appointment critical to a balanced and qualified parole board. I urge the entire Governor's Council to grant your consent and approval of Tonomey Coleman's renomination to the parole board.
Thank you very much. Good to see you. Councilor Devaney has a question.
Can I make an aside?
Real quick, because usually, and I made a mistake, we usually have a 3-minute limit. We went over a little, but that's okay. No, we're really busy, that's why we do it.
Just briefly, I note that Ms. Tina Hurley is here today, and you'll be hearing her renomination. I just want to express my unconditional support for her, and she's an outstanding member of the parole board and an individual. I also want to note that I understand you have a vacancy in the chair of the parole board, and I can think of no better candidate than Dr. Bonner to fill that position as chair. She has the background and the administrative experience to bring the highest of standards to the agency.
Thank you very much, and I just want to concur with you. I think Dr. Bonner has done, and as I just said, alluded to earlier, an outstanding job. I think she would be a great chair of the parole board. I couldn't agree with you more, but Councilor Devaney has a question.
I just want to agree with with you, Counselor. First of all, she did an outstanding job as chair. The morale was good. Inmates were released in parole. It was a wonderful time. It was really egregious that she was removed with someone who only gave us 2 years. So I want to agree with you. Thank you for saying that. Your testimony means a lot to me because of the population that you are representing. Now, having said that, the things that you've said about Tonomey, what would you say is the greatest quality that he brings to the parole board?
Well, there's many of them. His fairness is probably the underlying thing that I would see. He's very fair, and his experience, particularly as a defense counsel, he is able to make very pointed questions. He understands the streets, he understands the institutions and the nation, but he is based well in the realities of crime and rehabilitation, and so he brings that very unique piece to the board. His questioning is like right on target.
Well, the thing, I voted for him before. I've met with him twice, many hours. I feel I really know him, and I've been at the parole board. So, hearings. So, what I see is compassion. And I have said it many times. I won't vote for anyone if they don't have compassion. And that's so needed in a parole board member. It really, really is. So thank you for coming. Your testimony means a lot, really.
Thank you. If I may just say quickly, I've taken,
Sir, with all due respect, we have a really busy schedule. Now, you can laugh, but we've gone way over.
I understand.
We have a busy schedule. It's like they have a parole hearing. You can't go on hours and hours, but I appreciate it. Councilor Duff.
I actually have some questions. Sorry.
That's okay if you're, it's,
How many parole hearings would you say you attend in a year?
Probably a dozen lifer hearings and maybe another dozen non-lifer hearings and many parole revocation hearings.
You have a stellar reputation.
Thank you.
You're well-known in the bar and in the quote-unquote parole community for your good work. Have you, and so I know you've been doing this for a very long time, have you, in your work, ever encountered Michelle Weatherby?
I have.
And what were your experiences?
I've had a personal experience with her on 2 occasions.
Share them, please, and don't hurry all the time.
Okay.
excuse me, sir. I mean, I know, that wasn't the point. That wasn't the point. He can, if there's a question, as you know, excuse me. If you have a question, he can answer it and take as long as he wants. I didn't want him to go on and other things.
Back in 2010, I met Ms. Weatherby for the first time. I was representing inmates at Concord. She was assigned as essentially a parole social worker then. She had 2 years of experience and I had at that time 30 years of professional experience with the prison and parole inmates. I drafted a petition for reconsideration of a parole vote. And when she met with my client without me present, she made many disparaging remarks about the quality of my work. In fact, she made a statement to the inmate that this is trash. And as she looked at the trash barrel, he said, "This belongs in the trash." I have a few other comments I make regarding that. She stated, "What is this, a joke? This belongs in the trash. This has no merit. The person who did this has no business doing this. I hope you did not pay for this." I had never met Miss Weatherby when she made those remarks about my character and my quality of work performance. I had also heard previous to meeting her numerous complaints by inmates to me of how disrespectful she was to them in preparing her parole, pre-hearing reports. Very disrespectful. I was so concerned, I wrote a letter, which I have for the council. I have a letter that I addressed to her supervisor at Concord, the institutional parole officer. And I raised my concerns. He assured me he would address it, and he informed me that he gave her a verbal reprimand. I also asked for an apology, which she was reluctant and did not do.
She did not do it.
Did not. 3 years later, under the chairmanship of Josh Wall, I had prepared an advocacy package for an inmate. And when she met with that client of mine, she made the remarks, "You wasted your money. We don't respect what he does." Since this was the second incident, and I had been reluctant to go to the chair on the first instance, I did write to Josh Wall, and I outlined my concerns. I asked for an investigation into her conduct and her disparaging remarks. Chairman Wall did conduct a hearing, an investigation, and as a result of that investigation, she was formally disciplined. And I also understand she had to attend some training in like sensitivity training or of that nature. So those are the two instances that I've had direct experience with her commentary and her disrespect. Now, I understand that it's been years since that, but quite frankly, I don't think she's made any changes from what I understand in the way she treats people.
And I want to be clear, I didn't know that's what you were going to say. I've never spoken to you about this before.
Well, and I agree with that. I had been following these hearings, and I saw the attention that was being given to the controversy of Ms. Weatherby. And so I was prepared today in anticipation of similar questioning to provide you with my personal experiences. And I'd like to submit to the board the two letters that I've drafted. I had drafted one in 210 and one in 213 to document these issues I present today.
The reason I asked isn't just because this has come up on the board, it's because we got what I would consider a rather bizarre letter from her yesterday afternoon, which was completely, I don't know why we got it. Let me just put it that way. It was nonsensical to me. And so I just, it's bizarre. And I haven't discussed it with the other councils, so I don't know. I think it was CC to everybody. You know what, I'm not gonna ask any further questions because this hearing is for this man and I don't, I'll talk to you offline. I don't wanna derail this. The chair is correct that we have a lot of work to do and we need to get to the member here. Thank you, sir, for your testimony and thank you for your honesty. Frankly, that wasn't what I was expecting to hear, but it was enlightening.
May I submit these to the board for documentation?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put them, they will be submitted into the public record.
Thank you very much. Mr. Coleman, do you have another witness?
Yes, I do. I would call Sue Collette. And again, as I said, she is an institutional parole officer at MCI Shirley, and I've known her since 2013 as well.
Thank you very much. If you can introduce yourself, and we're more than happy to hear from you. Thank you.
Morning, members of Governor's Council. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. My name is Susan Collette. I've been an employee of the Parole Board since 2011, starting as an institutional parole officer and then being promoted to an institutional parole officer in 2016. I'm currently the institutional parole officer at MCI Shirley. I'm honored to speak in front of you today to say a few words in support of Board Member Tonomey Coleman. I've known Tonomey since he began with the Parole Board in 2013. Over the past several years, I've worked side by side with Tonomey on hundreds of county and state hearings. During COVID, I was able to sit in on several lifer hearings via WebEx where Tonomey was the lead and also where he was not. Tonomey has remained consistent throughout the years he has worked on the board and has always been thorough in both his preparation and questioning. Tonomey brings positivity and a strong work ethic to the parole board. He's approachable and always willing to offer support and advice. He has most recently assisted in training our 2 newest board members. He has a friendly personality and brings a lightheartedness to a difficult and at times high-stress work environment. He arrives prepared and researches each offender prior to their hearings. In doing this, he is able to ask relevant questions specific to each offender. He asks questions regarding the offender's institutional programming, behavior, and reentry planning. He's able to quickly build rapport with offenders with his calm and straightforward demeanor, which allows these men and women open and honest dialogue. Due to all of these qualities, he's able to set beneficial conditions to assist offenders with transitioning back into the community, whether it be through a gradual transition, a long-term residential program, or back to their home. He asks offenders for their feedback regarding what they feel would allow them to be most successful. For example, asking if they feel they would be more successful attending AA and NA or one-on-one counseling to address substance abuse disorders. He does not set blanket conditions, but rather individualized conditions to maximize success. If he's not prepared to parole an offender, he will give specific reasons for the denial and will offer suggestions on what the offender can work on for their next appearance before the board, whether it be to remain disciplinary report free, engage in particular programming to address a need area such as substance abuse or violence, or transition to lower security. This gives the offender hope and opportunity to show someone they can achieve goals set for them and to be successful. I've had the pleasure of working with Tonomey for several years now. He's in parole and in second chances. He's an asset to the parole board and has done an incredible job since his rise. It's my full support to continue in this role.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councilor Devaney.
Thank you for coming. Your testimony means a lot because I've said this before, I've been here a while, and we've had people that sat there and I said, how do you know this nominee? How often have you observed him or her? Oh, I saw him once in court. And I mean, what is that, 11 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. So out of all your observation about this nominee, what has impressed you the most that is so important to be a parole board member?
I think one of the most important things about Tonomey is if he doesn't know something, he will ask the other board members. So for instance, we have a psychologist, so he will defer mental health questions if he doesn't know about medication, like what does this medication do for this offender? And it's important to have him there because some of the board members aren't as knowledgeable about BOPs and criminal records. And so because he's been in the courtroom for a long time, he has knowledge about that, so.
Well, I've gone to parole board hearings and some of the last 2 recent ones I didn't vote for, they don't ask relevant questions. I was ready for them to ask, what's your favorite color? But anyway, I thank you for coming, and believe me, your testimony really means a lot, very meaningful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That will exhaust the witnesses who are in support of Mr. Coleman. Is there anyone in opposition? There no one being in opposition. We'll hear from you, Mr. Coleman, if you could make a brief presentation so we can get on with the questioning.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Chairman Iannella and distinguished members of the council. Thank you for having me here today and for your past approvals of me to serve on the parole board. I would like to thank the governor for renominating me to continue to serve the Commonwealth in this role. I would also like to thank members of his staff, specifically Lauren Green Petrino, and Sean Pierce for their help and support in this process. I've been serving on the parole board since 2013, have learned and grown in the position, and have a deep appreciation for the role entrusted to me. As you know, public safety is essential to the functioning of an orderly society. But also ingrained in our custom is a deep-rooted belief in second chances and opportunities for success. As a board member, I bear the heavy responsibility balancing these objectives. My respect and appreciation for the responsibility grows each day as I learn more and more through experience and training. If I am privileged to be confirmed for another term, I will continue to keep an open mind, and I will work with our parole team to ensure that incarcerated individuals have parole supervision on release to the extent that their release does not pose serious risk to public safety. And I would add, when granting parole, I will continue working with our parole team to ensure that parolees have necessary support and structure in place to maximize their likelihood of success. Again, I thank you for the opportunity. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Counselor Eileen Duff, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have distinguished work. It's been noted to me by many of the advocates that attend that you ask not just good questions, but your points of law are very well taken and have to explain law sometimes to other people. The decision that I found most interesting that you did, and you and I actually didn't speak about this, but was the Ben Laguerre decision. And you wrote quite a bit on that, did you not?
I did.
And it was, the reason I liked that, that was a very hot case where I live in my constituency, very, very hot. Many of my supporters, frankly, were supporters of him. And it was really difficult to get some of these folks to understand that this was an incredibly dangerous man. What you wrote was so detailed and so clear and concise. I personally found it very helpful to explain this case to folks. Is there anything, and I know I'm putting you on the spot because we didn't talk about this at all, but is there anything you would share about that and how you came to that and how long it took you to do that and everything? Because it's really, to me, it is a wonderful example of what decisions should be.
I mean, in that case, I pretty much just followed the facts, you know, the sequence of events and his explanation for certain things. My disappointment with him is that he was willing to engage in any sort of sex offender treatment. And, you know, in light of the facts and some of his behavior, frustrating, you know, us getting to the truth of whether or not he was actually involved in this crime. That was a serious consideration for the entire board, because obviously it's a life decision. So we had to take all that into consideration in deciding whether or not he was worthy of parole. I mean, there have been occasions where we've paroled individuals who've denied responsibility. You know, and that's, you know, it doesn't happen frequently, but it does happen. And a lot of it depends on what they've done to demonstrate that they're a suitable candidate for parole. Mr. Laguerre was unwilling to engage in any of that, so that was a problem for us.
It was also, I mean, I'm not going to rehash this whole case, and the man has passed, I understand, but his behavior throughout the case from beginning to end was just so, for lack of another word, bizarre. you would think that somebody who really thought they were innocent would do some of the things that he did. But anyway, I just wanted to say I appreciate your writing. I appreciate your thoroughness, and I hope we get back to some longer, well thought out decisions in the next administration. So, thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Counselor Terry Kennedy.
I don't have any questions for you. One of the things I pointed out to you before when we spoke on the phone is that I haven't heard anything about you, which is a good thing. And you're doing a great job. Just keep up the good work. I'll vote for you next week.
Thank you very much. Counselor DiPaolo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Morning.
I've had a lot of occasion to talk to people about you since I've been on the council, and I've only ever heard good things. As my colleagues know, we've had some pretty contentious parole board hearings in the last 2 years, and well before that, since I've been on. The silence speaks volumes. There's no letters of opposition against you. No staff has called me about you or the other nominee this afternoon. Literally zero concerns. And in spite of this being such a occasionally controversial board, at least from our perspective. And what I've heard is that you serve with integrity and that you treat people well, and that people respect you. And if someone were to not treat people well, or were to sully their service to the Commonwealth by creating toxic environments, there's not much we can do about it because there's no public pressure on us. No one knows what's going on with the parole board. But when members of the bar community hear about nominees that go through, their jaws drop. And maybe they need to step up and give some pressure, because there's no pressure on the administration, there's no pressure on this council to do what they think the public will think is right in matter of their votes. I appreciate your reputation for integrity and honesty in treating people the right way. I'm very glad that you've been put up for reappointment. And I have no questions for you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Counselor DiPaolo. Counselor Robert Juvenville.
Thank you very much. I like the fact, and I like that the last time you were here, and you've been a lawyer for 15 years practicing. 12 of those years were in the criminal courts in Dorchester and West Roxbury. And it's good to have a criminal defense lawyer on the board, in my view. So I think you've done a great job. Your parole rates, I think, are very good. We can always go higher, though. But
Right.
they're good, and I intend on voting for you next week.
Mr. Chairman?
Whenever your name comes up. Thanks.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Hello.
Mr. Chairman, it's Joe Ferreira.
I'm gonna get you right now. Sit tight, sit tight. Thank you very much, Counselor Jubenville. Next, we'll hear from Counselor Joseph Ferreira.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Tonomey, we've chatted before. You have a stellar reputation. I agree with Councilor DiPaolo. Not one negative thing's ever been said about you, and you have my support next week. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm just going to say, before we hear from Counselor Devaney, there is some issues with WebEx today. Counselor Ferreira and Counselor Hurley are attending the hearing, but difficulty with WebEx, but I believe we now have Counselor Hurley. Yes, Counselor Hurley.
yes, thank you. Mr. Coleman, you are an outstanding member of the parole board. I agree with everything that's been said about you, whether by the witnesses or by my fellow counselors, and I intend to vote for you next week.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Counselor. Next, we'll hear from Counselor Marilyn Petito Devaney.
Thank you. Oh, nice to see you again. My pleasure to meet with you again. You have a reputation across the everyone respects you, and no one deserves more to be a parole board member. You have represented us well. And one of the things that I am pleased about is that the life experience that you bring. You are an immigrant, and to think that you would adopt this country and want to serve in public service. And you have all the background as a, as a solo practitioner and all of that. But I'm timed, so I better stop. But I do want to ask you, how do you balance public safety with second chances?
You have to carefully vet the roommates to make sure that they present a reasonable risk, an unreasonable risk, I should say, public safety. And I think in doing that, you look to what they've done since they've been in. First, you have to look at what they did as far as the crime is concerned. Then you have to look at where they're at. In giving second chances, people have to be held accountable. And part of taking accountability is trying to address why you're in prison to begin with. One of the greatest pleasures I get out of this job is when I see the inmate actually turn their lives around. And some of them do a really good job. They change their perspectives, they educate themselves, and they prepare themselves to be released. Regardless of how serious the crime is, put in the work, and you've really demonstrated that you're actually attempting to change, making strides in doing that. I think you should get a second chance. Depending on what the crime is, it might require very close supervision, certain guardrails in place. But I don't think that should deprive you of the opportunity of parole supervision. I think that is in the public interest. We want people supervised to make sure that they're getting out there and they're doing the right thing.
Well, what I am so impressed with you is that you ask the questions that the public want to hear the answers to. They're probing, they're detailed. That's not always true with a couple of the people who just were appointed. But I feel that that's your greatest quality. Now, we talked about, and I love it, you have said in detail, and when we've met, about the follow-up of parolees, how important it is. Well, I saw how bad when it doesn't work the way that you said it should, and we all think it should. And I remember when Chairman Conrad was there, and they let Sinelli be released. And I went to that officer's funeral. It's heartbreaking. But when I called Conrad the day after the murder, he told me that, because I didn't know what the protocol was, and I wanted to know. And he told me that Sinelli was giving a plumber's, was going to learn how to be a plumber. He was going to live with his uncle and pay rent, see his probation officer every week. And he told me that was true. I found out it was not true. None of it. So he just was released out there, broke into a jewelry store, and killed Officer McGuire. Officer McGuire had got home to his wife and children. So what I'm saying is that that's very important. The chair is very important because making decisions on letting someone go with 3 life sentences who has escaped and shot a security guard, all of that. So how do you see that, what you can do as a parole board member to make sure your philosophy is filled, that we do follow up with these people for public safety? And we do believe in second chances, but people that deserve second chances. So tell me about, see that. Did you follow up? See, the probation officer, does anyone check?
Yeah, I mean, we don't check every case, obviously, but yeah, we rely on the team. We have a field parole staff, and we expect them to bring anything of serious concern to our attention. And when they do, we take steps to either bring them back or to conditions in place to ensure that they don't put any risk, with regard to that concern. I can't speak to what happened at other hearings, you know, in the past, because I wasn't there, I don't know.
It's not my need to put that on you. It has nothing to do with you. But I'm talking about my experience. And I went to that funeral and I thought, how egregious that this man was just left out. For sentences and there was no protocol followed. No protocol followed. So
I mean-
that's what I'm not talking about. But if, you know, that saying, if we don't learn from our history,
Yeah,
what happens?
that was a big point in history, and we
So
certainly.
that's why it will always stay in my mind. Because I was there and I saw the family and I saw the police chief get up and talk about that officer. That's what I'm saying, that I had no idea what the follow-up was, and that's when I called Conrad and I didn't get the correct information. So I'm just saying that the chair is very important. And I'm hoping that we will have the correct chair who has the experience in the past experience of being a chair to follow up on these things, because that should never have happened and it should never happen again. But your philosophy fits in, and that's why I bring it up, because you have said, you've said it publicly, and you said it to me, that, you know, you have to look at someone, how you balance that second chance. And that's what I like about you. So, I'm pleased that you were reappointed. You never know here, you never know, who's going to be, we got a state rep, never been to a hearing. This is where I am. I want people like you. I want people that are not afraid to ask and say, I don't know that, tell me about it. And that's how we all learn, because we can't all know everything. And so what have you felt in your term on the parole board has been the greatest experience? I mean, you've been a lawyer, you've been involved in a committee with hate crimes, you've done it all. So bringing that all to your position, what do you think has been the greatest, how can I say, consolation of one of the parole board members, or whatever, in your experience? Do you feel that, you know, that through the years, that all of your past experience, that you can look at that person and it's been paroled, and you followed up, and you said, boy, he deserved it?
Well, like I said, that's one of the greatest pleasures I take out of the job, when we actually have the successes, you know, especially when they do really well. We have had some cases where they do really well. It's always disappointing when, you know, they return, especially if a new crime is involved. But when they do well, that's, you know, we get a lot of pleasure in it. And obviously, if they want to keep up in terms of contacting us,
I've seen you at hearings, a life of hearing, and I sat there and you addressed this man in all chains and everything, and you called him sir. And I just was so impressed with that, the respect that you showed this individual. Do you know, I mean, you probably do that all the time, but for me, it made a big impression. Sometimes role board members get, you know, people put them all in one bag. And we shouldn't, because I know each one what they've done. And I will vote no against someone who I know doesn't have that compassion and that commitment and dedication and ask questions that we want asked. So I thank you, and I couldn't be more happier about your new appointment. We lost Lee, we lost Lucy, no rhyme or reason, egregious. So I'm just saying, I am thankful that you were reappointed and that you're willing to serve.
Thank you, I appreciate you saying that.
Thank you very much, Councilor Devaney. I don't have any questions. You've been on the parole board for a number of years. People who I speak with, talk to, who've appeared before you, lawyers, you treat people fairly. That's all anyone can ever ask. Not everyone agrees with you on every decision. We know that. But when you treat people with dignity and respect, you let everyone say what they have to say. That's all we can ask for. I think you're doing an outstanding job. Super great to see Dr. Bonner here, who I think is also an outstanding member of the parole board. When your name comes before the council, I'll be more than happy to support you. Thank you very much. That will conclude the hearing. At this point, we're going to call in Tina Hurley. So if you could leave the room as soon as possible, just so we get the next hearing going.
Jerry.
Thank you very much.